many people, they think they know what Nasdaq is, and perhaps they don't. And you've been working with financial technology. I mean, you are a technology firm in some ways. So tell me kind of how you see the fintech space. Has it come of age? That's the theme of our conference. And what's your role in it?
Sure. Well, Nasdaq is a technology company that serves the capital markets. And so when we look at the role that we play, we're actually in a very fortunate position to sit at the center of the capital markets, both as an exchange operator, but also as a provider of technology to the industry. So we serve the broker-dealers with obviously access to the markets, but we also serve them with our technology in terms of our surveillance technology and now our market infrastructure technology. We serve other exchanges around the world. We have 90 other exchanges that operate on our software to run their own markets. We serve the investment management community with data and analytics, and we serve the corporate clients with access to the markets, but also a suite of solutions, software solutions that help them navigate those capital markets successfully. So we are, in fact, a technology provider to the entire industry, and therefore, I do believe that fintech is coming of age. I think that there's so many opportunities for the industry to use technology to serve their clients better.
So where is the technology going? What are the big themes? We talked a little bit about AI and machine learning in the previous panel, but not really very much. Kind of what are the big innovations that you're most excited about?
Sure. Well, we are always, we love that question because we're constantly focused on it internally. We invest an enormous amount of time, energy, and resources to understanding where technology is going and therefore what role do we play in it. When we look at the major themes that we're focused on, we're definitely focused on the cloud and the opportunities that the cloud provides the financial services industry generally. You know, every exchange today sits on-prem at the exchange locations, and they're obviously in highly secure data centers, but the fact of the matter is the cloud provides an enormous opportunity for us to look at scaling the businesses and lightening the infrastructure footprint to make it so that they can be a lot more flexible and agile in developing capabilities for their clients. So we are focusing on our next generation market infrastructure technology being cloud enabled, and we're really, really excited about that. I think the second area is definitely machine intelligence, and we are extremely focused on bringing more and more machine intelligence in terms of the market reg tech, so the regulatory technology that we serve. We are the largest provider of surveillance technology to the broker-dealer community, exchanges, and regulators, and using machine intelligence to make those alerting capabilities more insightful, more intelligent, and more advanced is very, very important, in addition to providing insights to investment management firms and broker-dealers on trading and investments. And then the third area is the blockchain. And we are very heavily invested in the blockchain. We've developed that capability internally. Our next-gen system is a blockchain-enabled end-to-end. We have a market going live this fall with the blockchain, and we also have several blockchain implementations internally and with clients. And then the last one is further into the future is definitely quantum computing is an area that we're extremely focused on understanding where and when it's coming, because it will be a game changer in our industry.
Well, I need to gear up before I start asking questions about quantum computing. I get in my head, so it goes a bit funny. But firstly, on the using of machine learning on the surveillance and regulatory side, because we had quite a lot of conversation in the previous panel about how regulators are a step behind. This seems to be an area where the regulatory process is effectively harnessing the same technology that is driving the disruption.
Yeah, I would say that we want to make sure that as a provider of what I would call protection, you know, we're not only a market and we provide market technology to others, but we also provide them the protections that they have to be able to monitor and manage those markets successfully and manage their interaction with the market successfully. So we have to be as advanced, or frankly more advanced, than the guys who are trying to do the wrong thing. And so machine intelligence to us is a great way for us to build out, number one, natural language processing and tying e-coms compliance into surveillance. So if there's intent to do bad things within a firm, does it manifest itself in trading behavior? And we can create an end-to-end solution now with both the e-coms compliance and the surveillance. And that's using machine intelligence on the e-coms compliance side, and then much more sophisticated alerting on the surveillance side. So that's one implementation of machine intelligence. I think then also just making sure that our algorithms are staying ahead of what other people might be trying to do in the markets, and applying that to the 140 broker-dealer clients, the buy-side clients, and the regulators and exchanges to make sure that we all have those protective capabilities in place.
When I hear you talk about that, I think, well, that's all great. It makes me more comfortable about the security and stability and safety of the market. On the other hand, it makes me think, what about cybersecurity, and how vulnerable are you to that, and how much do you think about it, and how often are you attacked? How big a part of your worry list is that?
Well, I would say that every CEO of any company that has anything to do with technology, whether it's part of their business or just part of their infrastructure, should be very, very mindful and focused on IT security, and as am I. I think that we, in a way, have been very fortunate because we had to get very involved in IT security almost at the dawn of the internet, because online broker capabilities came into place in 1995, and that started bringing in, for Nasdaq, a way for people to interact with the markets through the internet. Now, indirectly, because they would go through broker-dealers, but we always had this network capability, and so we've always had to be very protective in terms of how we secure the markets. And as a result of our, I would say, focus and investment in that over many, many years, we are extremely, extremely focused on IT security, as you can possibly imagine. We have a lot of resources behind it internally. We partner with among the best firms around the world, both in Silicon Valley and other countries, to make sure that we're bringing the best technology to the markets, and we are ever vigilant. And I meet with the CISO on a regular basis, as well as obviously our CIO, and so does our board, to make sure that they understand all the protections we're putting in place. But it is obviously an area of great focus.
It's an area where, I mean, if you look at Equifax, you just kind of think, how can this happen, viewing it from the outside? That scale of not only that scale of hack, but then the kind of way that it was dealt with afterwards. So do you think the financial, and you deal with a lot of companies, and it's good to hear that you're so focused on it, but do you think the financial services industry broadly is one area where actually people are sufficiently focused and cognizant of the risks?
I certainly, from our perspective, in terms of our role, as well as our broker-dealer clients and their role, extremely focused. And we also, one of the great things about IT security is, I would say, it's one of the few areas where all of the competitors come together. It's very much a community discussion. We sit at the same table with some of our clients. We're willing to have conversations with all of our competitors. The SEC, frankly, has created a good forum for us to make sure that we have the right security measures in place and that we're talking to each other. We have ready access to the government, and we have dialogue with the government, as do all of our peers, and so do our clients. And so I would say that, in my opinion, the broker-dealer community that we work with, as well as the regulators, are extremely focused on this. And it allows us, therefore, to have, I think, much more intelligence and better capabilities because we do talk to each other.
Well, that's positive. Let's look forward and where you think the next wave of innovation and disruption is coming from. And you mentioned the blockchain. We talked a little bit about that in the previous panel, not enough. Is that an area, or if not there, where is it that you think over the next year or two are going to be the biggest changes for Nasdaq coming from fintech?
Well, I think that blockchain, to me, is a little bit more of an evolution that becomes a revolution over time. So the reason I say that is because the easiest thing about the blockchain is the technology. I can put in blockchain capabilities into our markets very easily. The issue is that I then have to work with my entire ecosystem of all of my clients to make sure that they're also implementing it into their back office. So in order for us to speed up settlement or to eliminate elements of clearing and settlement, all of the systems and all of what I call the spaghetti that occurs after a trade, between a trade and settlement, has to change. And that is a very complex system in the public markets today, both at every single firm, and most of that technology is very old. And so to rip it out and to do something different takes a lot of time. So I say that's an evolution because I view that the biggest and best opportunities for the blockchain today are in less regulated markets, or in the private markets, or in bilateral trades, smart contracts. And I think you're seeing more and more of that going into a digital environment. The Nasdaq private market has a blockchain capability. We can settle out all of our trades through the blockchain and through a digital currency settlement with using a city capability. And so then we're applying it to the fund market in Sweden now. We've got it in certain new markets that are being formed in the ad tech space are using the blockchain to settle out their trades because that's an unregulated area. So those areas that are new, unregulated, or really inefficient are the ones that are really the great opportunities for the blockchain today. And I think once we are able to prove that out and it really does speed up time and it becomes more of an established practice, it will move closer and closer into the highly regulated markets. There are some markets around the world that are really trying to go at it and change the way that they deal with settlement, like the Australian exchange today. But I call it it takes a village type of initiative, and so I think it'll be longer coming.
Let's open up to questions. There's one already from the app, and then any of you in the room who want to raise your hands. The question is, given its influential role in the market, can Nasdaq do more to work with fintech, regtech startups?
Sure. So, well, we actually have started to do a lot more working with regtech startups. So the first thing is we've launched a venture fund within Nasdaq that allows us to meet with lots of regtech, fintech startups to make sure that we understand what technologies you're bringing to market and that we may become an investor. But now we only become an investor if we see a strategic opportunity to work with you. So we're not there as a financial investor only, we're there as a strategic investor. So that means that you then have an opportunity to work with our regtech business to understand what the opportunity is to apply your technology into the services we offer. And if we see that as an opportunity, that obviously can be a catalyst to your business, makes us better, and it gets you funding. So that's the model that we've been taking with a lot of the startups. So
what kind of scale of investment have you been doing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So that example that I used on the e-coms compliance side, that's actually through a partnership with a company called Digital Reasoning. They have the natural language processing machine intelligence capabilities on the e-com side. We have the machine intelligence capabilities on the surveillance side, and we're integrating those two solutions together, and we have an investment in them. We have a stake in that company.
Sustainable and impact investing has become, a massive demand area, and what we're seeing is corporations trying to figure out what kind of disclosures to make on environmental, social, and governance factors. The quality of the data has been crap for a while, but it's getting better and better, and there are massive amounts of it. So could you comment where you guys are on the idea of listing standards for ESG factors for the companies?
Sure. Well, I think that what we have chosen to do, and it's been a conscious decision of ours, is to take a little bit more of what I would call a best practice approach to looking at ESG, where we put out white papers, we give out examples, we've actually shown some proxies that we think are really well done. We give you data as to how well our companies are doing in certain ESG. Particularly, we've been looking a lot at board diversity. We also look at social and governance practices. In the Nordics, we actually are leading the way a little further, and then we've put out a whole best practice book. We've done a lot of conferences there, specifically on social, environmental, and governance, but we've been focusing on all three elements of ESG to make sure that we really are guiding our companies towards what is the right standard to apply to your business. But we do not make it part of the listing standards because honestly, right now in this country, and actually the Nordics are actually on fire when it comes to IPOs, but in this country, we are finding that we've put a lot of gates in place for a company to cross the Rubicon between being a private company and a public company. And so why is it that suddenly, just because you're a public company, you're subject to a massive number of standards that you weren't subject to the day before? So we are trying to actually make it so that it's less onerous to go public than it is today. If we suddenly put a bunch of listing standards on them around ESG, I think that's just one more gate to put up. But if we give them best practices, we show them what the right way to do it, I think investors, frankly, have the best opportunity to really force those practices on the companies. I think, in our opinion, that's the best way to make the change.
Right.
Nasdaq, with its vast reach amongst many countries, has sort of the eye of Mordor that it can focus now on Puerto Rico or Houston or Mexico or Florida. How does a leadership in a group like that, which supports companies that believe in growth, how do you take some of the resources you have and turn that power of all those companies together? How do you help be part to organize around some of these things? What could you do?
So I think that honestly with our role, what we do is we make sure that we have a foundation and we provide our own financial support to organizations that are local, that are really trying to try to do the cleanup and that are focusing on making sure that the states and the cities recover from the natural disasters. We don't try to kind of take that a role of like creating a whole community just in one state, because honestly the companies are doing that themselves. I mean, Michael Dell, for instance, has a huge fund, and he's taking a huge leadership role in cleaning up Houston. So our job is to support him, not so much to kind of compete with him to try to do it ourselves. So we try to work with the local companies that are already really vested in that, and then give some money as well as our time, and make sure, and awareness to make sure that people are aware of how to help.
Earlier this week, Chairman Clayton was testifying before the Senate Banking Committee. And while one of the senators suggested extending Regulation SCI to beyond the current SROs to alternative
ATSs.
trading systems, dark pools, and possibly treasury trading platforms. What is your thought on that?
Well, I certainly think that creating a level playing field is the right thing to do. I think you have to come up with a standard of size and influence that they have in the market. So right now, Reg SCI does apply to certain ATSs if they reach a certain size, and so that there are certain ATSs that are captured under that rule. To be honest with you, we think Reg SCI is a good standard to have for these very important and systemically important companies that serve the capital markets. And so applying that standard or some portions of that standard, maybe a modified version of that standard to more of the ATSs is not an inappropriate thing to do. I think it's a matter, though, of making sure you're doing it in a rational way based on the size and scope of their business. You don't want to keep those firms from being able to start something like that, right? And put so many gates up that they can't even launch one. But you do want to make sure that once they reach a certain position in the market, that they have certain standards put on them.
You talk a little about the Equifax events. The previous panel talked about the themes of trust and innovation. But if you can you comment on pulling those together around collecting maybe even more data on consumers or businesses than you need, which makes it vulnerable to being hacked? Like, just the app for this event wants to get my calendar and my contacts and my camera and my Bluetooth and my location, and I'm just not sure that really does anything for being here right now.
Right. So I actually think that's a broader societal question that I always wonder when you go online and you're kind of giving all this information. And in fact, in terms of looking at putting a credit freeze on, you actually have to give all this information, and you're like, I don't think I'm going to give that online anymore. So I would say just, that's more of a societal question than the role that Nasdaq plays, but certainly be mindful. That's all I can say.
Be mindful is always good. I just want to end, and there'll be a link to the next panel, with the question about who are the disruptive innovators in your space? Just who are you most worried about, or who do you think it poses the greatest challenge?
I would say that I don't really look at it that way. And the reason why is because, frankly, we are a disruptor ourselves. And so what I like to look at is, where can we really help the industry advance itself through some disruption? We don't have
no
as much
disruptive innovators who threaten you?
Well, honestly, we look at it and say, so for instance, the blockchain, right? So the blockchain to us, frankly, isn't that much of a risk. We have a clearinghouse in the Nordics, but otherwise we are not a clearinghouse as a general matter. At the same time, we have a lot of clients who are. So our job is to enable those clients to see the future and implement that technology as part of their future, as opposed to ignore it. We just see our role a little bit differently, I would have to say, and I do think that there's always going to be areas where technology could come in and take certain parts of our business and change it. And what I've been trying to encourage the team to be is, don't be afraid of that. Embrace it and try to figure out how we're going to implement it ourselves so that we can make sure that we stay ahead of those types of trends.
So that's the confidence of the startup, but with the from the incumbent, if you will. The previous panel, we can't really call these companies startups, but the two innovators in the previous panel said that they had plans to be around for 5,000 years. Is Nasdaq going to be around for 5,000 years?
I sure hope so. We're about 47 years in, so we have a little bit of a
You've only got another 3,000.
That's right, exactly.